So today is definitely not an introductory stream, but I've had something I've been wanting to take care of for a little while, and I thought now would be the time. So the basic concept is I've been doing a lot of work with cam snappery, dual projector plus projection mapping stuff. I'm just going to load this in the background to show you a demo I made, where I was having issue with the cam snapper camera blending just not working properly. So basically this should create a mask that both projectors overlay on top of each other properly, but it's not doing anywhere near what I wanted to. The idea being that one projector, projector 1 and projector 2 are looking at the same object, so it should mask out what projector 1 from the other one so it projects properly, but it's not working like that at all. So the goal was that I make a custom masking, or a masking tool that allows me to precisely mask what is and isn't shown by a projector. Now, originally I was thinking that I could just use the... I've opened the wrong thing, sorry. I was thinking that I could just use Stoner, but it's a bit clunky and it doesn't really do what I want it to do specifically. It's got too many options, too many warping types, or it's basically just too much happening, is what I'm saying. So I thought that I could try and make my own and see how that went. So the general idea being that we're going to have image that we intend to be projected, a mesh, like a little grid of points. We then map that image onto that mesh, manipulate the points so that we can create a curvy mesh, for example. And then that is what goes to our projector. And it would also allow us to have a, let's say like an alpha mask of this duplicated. So it's just a fine-tuned projection mapping tool as well as something that allows us to apply alpha over the top of it. Things like these do exist, but I've never made one myself, so I thought I'd give it a bash. So first thing we're going to want to start with is an image. And because of the manipulation we're doing, we're going to want to put this in a 3D space, so I'm going to do a rectangle. I am actually going to keep Stoner open in the background. I have one called Stoner Reference that I was working with, because I've tested some ideas of this before I dived in. Nothing more embarrassing than publishing a 2-hour video where you don't achieve what you want. So I kind of had a concept of what I was trying to achieve. I'm going to apply it to that. Let's do a wrong one, material. In between now, let's add a transform. And we want this to go into a geo. So, rectangle that is the same size as our geometry, or sorry, we want to change this so it is so we want our projector to be 1920 by 1080, and I'm going to do parent.par.width and parent.par.height. So that's a subtle change, but it just changed our rectangle from being a square to the same resolution effectively as our shape. I don't think we want a rectangle at all, we want a grid. We're going to use a grid, remember that. How many rows and columns do I want? So let's do parent.par.width divided by 100. Can I get the aspect ratio divided by parent.par.height? Basically, I want it to be 16 by 9. I'm just going to type 16 for what it's worth. So if I was to look at that in a for the material, I'm going to add a wireframe. Okay, so that's slightly too complex. There we go. So all I want are these, and essentially what we're going to do is use these points of the grid. You know the deal. I'm going to use these points on the grid as locations that I then pull, move, and manipulate and control. So this grid isn't actually going to be my source. I want to replace that with a... because I'm going to need to use data, so I'm going to do SOP2, and then I'm going to do a table, and that table is going to go dat2. For now, we can just pop that in there, give it that as the source. Don't need two of these. There we go. So that's our chain there. So we have our original grid that then goes through some sort of manipulation. Is this transformed? Do we maybe want to add our size here instead of this transform? Let's have a look. Parent. I'm just trying to think of a pipeline optimization here so it doesn't break later on. Okay, yeah, that works. So we can remove the transform from the network because otherwise it would get messy. So now we generally have points in space that relate to our object. I'm actually just going to look at how Stoner does this, because I'm pretty sure I want to replicate that. So as a geometry, convert, switch, final, geoscale. Okay, so I'm actually going to remove my transform altogether. I'll leave this as a mesh. 1, 1. And then I'm going to add a geometry null that is just our scalar. So now if we load in a camera and a render, and let's plug that in there as well and do 1. Orthographic camera, that's the correct width, that makes sense. There we go. And then what this was doing is it scaled it down by 0.8 just so you could actually see the full thing in frame. So that wouldn't work. So you leave that full sight just so the camera sits slightly further away from the edge so it's not as close. You could even probably go down to like a 0.9. But it's just so the edges don't touch purely. I think in Stoner they introduced something that basically allows you to zoom in and out, but we don't need that. Okay, so now I have a grid, so let's add an out. Sorry, let me just send a text message. And let's do a composite and a constant. So we get a black background. we go. And let's set our render top to be the right resolution. Go to dual panel. Oh god. Textport. Panel. And then we want to, yeah, project one. It'll automatically accept out one. Let's make our wireframe a bit thicker so we can see it. And now that I have over here, I've got my original grid going to a SOP2, and that I want to put into another table that then actually drives my DAT. Because now if we were to manipulate our, basically if we were to change the values of these points, let me see if I can visualize this for you. So this is where the magic's going to happen. We want to go in and change where P, 0 and 1 are, the X and Y coordinates, and that will actually move and manipulate our grid. And in turn, that should manipulate our image because that's what's directly applied to the texture. So now if I do a text stat, I'm going to copy this table into here. So I'm going to call this new pause, orig, pause, and let's do edit. So source is equal to operator orig pos. Target is equal to operator new pos. Shout out Matt Regan for this. This is a classic. So and then we're gonna do target.copy source. Run it. And suddenly we get our new table. Now if we throw that in there, nothing has changed, but our dat2 now manipulates our input using our source dat. So if I open this in Textport and then change something, so let's go for one that's dead in the middle. So these right hand coordinates are the y, it's x and y. So when it goes to a positive number, it means that it's crossed over halfway on the screen. So if I was to change this to like 0.1, you can see we move that one. So let's move one of the middle ones, 0.3. So there you can see that moved up. And most importantly, it actually altered the image slightly because it's offset a bunch of stuff. I'm trying to get ones that have the image in it. So you can see us actually altering the image by moving these points already. So now if I gave fine control and the ability to use the mouse to move pixels within their own ranges, then it should allow us to projection map with super fine control. So I'm going to rerun this for now because we want our blank table. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy something else from the Stoner book where I'm going to introduce a geo instance that basically draws on top of these points. When we export this table, we get points because this is a grid, and we can use that grid to generate cubes. So let's do circles because we're mad. I'm going to make a nice texture for it as well because I like wasting time. So circle, let's make it blue, and then I'm going to composite, transform, and shrink it a bit. And then instead of that, if we do add, so there we go, now we have a nice little button that we can use for our texture. So I'm going to add a transform and a material, and this is just normal practice for me. I normally add a transform and a material after every SOP that I create, just in case I ever need it. So I apply that. Let's scale our circle up so it fits properly, so we don't get that stupid black edge. And then we want to apply this in an instance manner. So I'm going to add a geometry, and that geometry is going to be instanced by our new position chart, P0 and P1. That's a wee bit intense, so let's add it to our scale. and then give these a uniform scale that's way smaller. Maybe I don't want to change the geo scale, but I want to change the and then because I'm scaling on a rectangular basis, basically my X and Y scale on my offset are wrong or not equal. It means the square that I've got coming in, I need to offset the scale of this slightly to make it square. So basically you're just dividing it by the ratio that is the inverse of the aspect ratio. This is drawing them in the wrong order, so we want to make this geometry rank above these. If I knew how to do that, that would be helpful. So it's working, it's just in the wrong place. There you go. Remember, we're working on a camera. So all I did there was I lifted my circles, and actually I better lift this by 0.1 as well. These are way too intense. It's gonna just be like trippy optical illusions non-stop, I can tell already. There we go. So now we have circles on all our points. If we were to move one, the point in turn will move as well. So now we have a handle that we can use to control our information. What we need to do is we need to get information on when we are clicking these and not clicking these. Thankfully, we have a camera in 3D space, so we can make use of things like the render pick, but we want a name, so we're going to use a dat. So I'm going to do a render pick dat. So the render top, and then the camera, and then I'm going to give it a location that is panel. And I just want I want UV and select, and then I want to do chop 2, include channel names, plug this in. Now if I click something, so you can see it now tells me what I am picking. I don't know if I want the custom camera. And we need more data, and for this I'm gonna have to probably, oh no, in subspace, in world space? No, in subspace was right. Fetch texture UV. No, field depth, fetch instance ID. Here we go, so that's what we want now. So now this is giving us information. So if I click this one, that's instance 37. And in here, I'm guessing that's line 37 created that. So if I was to move this to 333, you can see the one that I clicked moved down. So that is how we're going to control this. We're basically going to get a reference of which instance is being clicked, and then attempt to manipulate it. Just give me 1 second. Sorry, I just had to check my email quickly. So now I'm getting the instance number. I can use that to work out where it's going. This also, I need to double check on the coordinates it's giving me. So if I click this, my location is, so 46, negative 333, negative 116. So those are the numbers I need to get in here. So because panel, do I maybe want the UVs of where I am? I basically need to correlate the information of where this is based on the information that's in here. Like, why is 46 at a position of negative 025, negative 16667? And when I click 55, it's at negative 3. I wonder if there's some math for me to do here. So it's at a coordinate of negative 648 and negative 102. I wonder if that is in some way a correlation to, if we look at 55, the percentage of the height. So I'm going to guess it goes from zero to 1 to 1. Right, okay. Alright, we don't need the map ID. I'm just going to have a quick look at the way that the... I'm pretty sure this must do it on resize, key list, render pick path. Here we go. So we wanted to work out how this does it in subspace. Alright, okay, sadly this isn't giving me any details. So let's have a look at how that relates to mine. So all I'm looking at Stoner for is to try and work out how they translate these coordinates. So when I click it, it gives me a value. They also include the texture UV. I'm not sure how that can help me. Let me see if I can get texture information off. render pick in theirs also did something cool where it was doing row U and row V. So all I'm doing here is I'm adding a second row. It used to join. So now it shows me the last one selected and the current hover. So it's just a more accurate tool. I imagine it'll be helpful at some point. Who knows? Okay. What do I have? I currently have the rollie data, so I can tell when I'm over a point. Okay, so now I'll hold the last it was picked. Why does it remember this one properly? Right, okay, I'm gonna add a second render that only gets the geometry. Because I think that might be what has been confusing things. Okay, so now the problem is that what is this ty value? What geometry is it seeing? UI points one in. How do they limit what it does and doesn't pick? Maybe it's so. Whereas I move mine forward, they. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So now it can only pick my points. What value do I want to get? So all I need to do is work out what this value is. Do I need to work that at all, or do I just need to know which one is picked? Am I overthinking it? Because what position did I say? So I'm pretty sure the points are normalized between 0.5 being... So that's instance, alright, let me find instance 0. This is instance 0 here, and that is at -5, -5, which means that all the way down the bottom should be at 5, 5, so 413 is at 5, 5. So it's -5 to 5 rather than 0 to 1. So if I was to normalize my panel data, so let me do another panel here and just get the roll or just UV select again. Yeah, it will update. Add this to a chop execute. So if I do a chop execute on value change, or if I do off to on, and I say if channel.name is equal to select and val equals 1, print Yes. So now I'm doing is checking to see if I can get data that transport to type for string and so now it says that selected and the value is 1. So the channel name 1 select is equal to 1. So what I want to do now in here is I want to get my render pick ID from the last selected point. So if we do target inst is equal to operator picker, let's change that to picker to instance, and let's print target inst. So it's actually one version behind at the moment. So we would take this part above here, it is still one behind. How can I get a more up-to-date value? Maybe I try row 1. 19 is correct. 83 is correct. Okay, we can work with that. So now my table is called new pause. New pause is equal to operator new pause. So the index relates to its index is its row number minus 1. So that means inside here, what I want to do is I want to go to new pause target ins minus 1. And let me just do a test. So go to that row and the column P0. And set it equal to 0. So now if I click something, it should become 0, he says. So if I click 217, don't need that, 217, oh no, I've done it the wrong way around. So which one did I click? I clicked 41. (32) was my target position. So I should have gone target position minus 1. It should be 22. Is that what I want? So my target was 23 and I went to line 22. No, so it's index plus 1. So if I pick point this is point 41. 41 is actually referenced on line 42, so I do plus. Let me recopy the table. Okay, that looks right. So now when I click a point, it moves to the right position. Oh, I just broke something. Okay, so we want so if we do if target does not equal -1, then do all of this stuff. So now when I click outside, it shouldn't error, but if I click a point, it should move it to the dead center. Okay, so all we need to do now is actually move it to the point where we are clicking. We're starting to get somewhere. Wherever that somewhere is, I have no idea. So now we need to, let's normalize our coordinates. So right, okay, so let's normalize our coordinates. So we have, does Python have a map function? Norm u is equal to, and norm v is equal to, how do I normalize these? So my picker values go between 0 and 1, and their values go between -0.5 and 0.5. Can I do this with a maths instead? Ref is equal to operator panel ref u, and then I want to do ref v. And once I've done that, I want to do P0 is equal to norm u, P1 is equal to norm v. Almost. So it's not quite accurate. Why is that? So you can see when I click it, the shape moves too far, so it's no longer in the right place. Maybe my render picker isn't big enough. It's just the scale that's slightly wrong. Let's reset our script. So, why would this be an issue? Just going to take a break for 5 minutes.